Hi, my name is Neville Page, and I'm here at the Dallas International Film Festival.
Neville, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the festival.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your current job title?
The current job title would be called concept designer, which is very broad. And in film, as a concept designer, you do everything from creature, character, sets, props, vehicle, and costume.
And I appreciate that description because many people see it in the credit lines but won't have a clue what it is. And tell us about some of the works that they may be familiar with because they might not be yet familiar with your name.
Probably the most obvious one now is Avatar, just because it's gotten so much attention, and I got screen credit of lead creature designer on Avatar, which is wonderful to get that credit. There was a lot of people involved, I wasn't the only one. Tron Legacy, that's coming out in December. Green Lantern I'm currently working on. Star Trek, Cloverfield, X-Men, going back now. But I think that those are more titles that I think people would recognize my work in.
And until they arrive. And so let's talk about your actual work itself. Specifically, starting from Avatar, let's talk about the technical side and then how that's been progressing as you work on each of the projects that come your way.
Well, usually it always starts with a pencil, and particularly with somebody like James Cameron, who is an artist himself, and he's really quite good with a pencil. And I wouldn't say he's a sculptor, but he can take your clay sculptures and work them at the same time. So he likes to get in there and work with you. So the artists that he hires, he likes them to be of a traditional background. And he actually wouldn't allow us to use certain tools at the beginning because he really wanted the freshness of a sketch. And which is kind of ironic to Avatar, because oftentimes I've been asked about how high-tech was it that you were working on Avatar, because it's the most high-tech, most expensive film ever made. And it's like, yeah, we used a pencil sharpener that was electric, so that was pretty high-tech. But we did start to roll into using digital sculpture about halfway through, because it just made sense to have a process that allows the director and producers to have a chance to be a part of the development quickly. For example, if you're designing or sculpting a character, and if there's a change that is asked of you to make, it's oftentimes at least a few days, maybe even a few weeks. With digital, it can be right there while they're looking over your shoulder. It's like, oh, you want it to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer, shorter, give me just a sec, and you start moving things around. Is that it? Yes, okay. And that is a big thing for particularly people like Jim, who are there and collaborating with you, so you're able to do his specific desires on the fly. And that's changed. The technology has really changed how we work on almost every level, not just creature design, but props, sets, environments, and costume, as I was alluding to earlier with Tron.
And yeah, let's talk about that one too, because before the taping, that was a pretty neat challenge about the characters wearing the costume and having to work with that. So what's that stage like?
Well, in doing the costumes for Tron, the original film, there were these glowing lights on these spandex outfits, and it was when I first got the opportunity to work on it. I hadn't seen Tron in years. I just remembered what Tron was like, and when I put in the disc and I started watching Tron, I thought, wow. I'm looking at like hockey equipment and football gear, respirators that aren't even on their face, just kind of hanging around their neck. And it was so low tech. It was incredible. Yet we wanted to retain some of that in the costume design. So I'm speaking more about the metaphor and the references and the homages about the original Tron. But the process was we had a wide open slate. We could design any kind of surface and use any kind of technology for actors to wear, but the mandate was it had to be practical, meaning it's never practical financially, but practical in terms of it's going to light up in front of the camera and it's all going to happen in camera, as opposed to the original, which is it was all post. So that made the process so incredibly difficult as to how you would make a latex costume wearable with stripes of light. But what we had done was sculpted them in the computer to develop the design with, again, the director being allowed to collaborate more. And then we grew these sculptures. I use grow loosely, but it's a term that we use when you can actually take the design and a machine will grow it, machine it, make it essentially 3D. And those 3D things that were made were then cleaned up a bit, actually a lot in some cases, and they became the costumes that the actors wore. So from the sculptures that we were doing in the computer all the way to the final garment that they're wearing, it was all within the technology of a computer and machines that make stuff. It was like using sci-fi Tron technology, but in real life.
And Neville, how does the increasing demand for 3D movies change up your approach from the technical side and from the artistic side?
It's a question that I'm asked often, how 3D affects what we do with the aesthetics and the technical, and the unfortunate answer is not at all. Because design it has to survive in any medium, in print or on screen as a 2D looking image or as a full parallax stereoscopic 3D image. So it's not about anything that we would do to make the design look more 3D, because you can imagine everyone would turn into Stay Puft Marshmallow. Make it bigger, 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 get it closer to the lens. And then you have a design that's trying to entertain on a 3D level versus just a design level.
So in other words, the story and the design for it needs to be sound, no matter what.
That's always the case. Yeah, story first, and the design would support story. And then any other bells and whistles that you choose to have, whether it be lights on a suit or an interesting reveal or 3D, those are just other things to kind of maybe heighten the level of the experience. But it does come down to the narrative structure, sequential moments, and good character.
What advice and what software would you recommend aspiring filmmakers to become familiar with to get a head start in the line of work that you're in?
Well, if you're referring to aspiring filmmakers, it's different than film designers, I think, depending on your description. But
yeah, I meant film designer, someone that's
okay.
Specific to what you do.
That's an easier question to answer then. The most important thing is to learn how to draw. It's kind of like saying to somebody who you're going to advise them to speak publicly. It's like, what's the most important thing that you would suggest? It's like, well, you learn the alphabet first, and then how those make words, and words make sentences, sentences paragraphs, and then you have the tool in which to communicate. So learning how to draw is that language. Once you've learned that, the most important thing is what you have to say with that tool. And then that's a whole different conversation that could go on forever, particularly with me. Not because I have the answer, just because I'm long-winded. But the most important thing for an aspiring designer is to get the tools to communicate with efficacy with the people that can judge the intention. And I say that because certain people have different judgment skills. Some people can see a sketch and be able to understand it. Some people need a fully realized image. Mm-hmm. So you kind of need all these tools available to draw it or build a model in the computer. So I'm using a software that's called ZBrush, which allows me to sculpt and realize in the round very quickly these models. I also use Photoshop, but that's pretty much industry standard now. But ZBrush is more unique in terms of the toolkit that not a lot of designers are using yet.
And Neville, what's your website?
NevillePage.com.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
it.